Hi, and welcome to another exciting pirate news where we bring you the latest and the greatest. Tonight with me, I have Steve, Jamie, and Malt. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
Ahoy.
I'm doing, man.
And you know what? I'm just going to jump right into one of the big topics that I got for the evening, which is we had some defund police protests going on in Lowell, um, but they ended up being peaceful. Uh, the only thing that happened
Oh,
was
God.
the police stopped them from going onto our main street, which is called Merrimack Street, where a lot of downtown businesses and everything are. But other than that, I mean, the organizers really pushed for it to be peaceful, and they were handing out snacks and masks, and you know, out of one of the cities that has a great history for being a rough and tough city, it ended up being very, very peaceful, and I'm so proud of our local efforts and community.
Cool.
So, no matter what side you're standing on. That being said, we do have some other fairly interesting news going on, at least in the housing front. And with that, Steve, can you tell us more about that? What's going on there?
Yeah, there is. I've been spending my weekend going through a proposal from our fair city, Cambridge, called the Affordable Housing Overlay District. So this is, one of something that came up in Cambridge a year ago. It's back again this year, but generally the effort is to provide lower cost housing. So the general gist, I'd kind of say there are three parts to the bill. One is that in any project done under this ordinance, if it were adopted, all 100% of the apartments, condos, units, if you like, would have to be deed restricted to specific area median incomes, aka the legal definition of affordable. So number two is that they the you know there would Cambridge would relax some of the regulations, and this is more sort of in the weeds, but how high a building can be, the ratio of or the ratio of units to lot area, parking requirements, and that sort of thing. The whole idea seems to be to make it more economical to build more apartments, et cetera, inside of a single building. And the third part, which is I think will be, could be a big component in making this, really effective, is that a project that meets sort of all of the performance guidelines that they set forward would be by right, which means there's not a discretionary hearing. No one can take you to court. No one can drag the court case out for years and years and years, which is one of the things that does tend to happen in Massachusetts, with attempts to build affordable housing, particularly under our Chapter 40B. So there's, we should have a link to sort of like Cambridge's webpage with more information on this. I see that they have a planning meeting coming up in I think it's August 4th, which I'm hoping it will be virtual, and I'm hoping to attend it because even though I don't live in Cambridge, I'm still really interested, and I think it's a good enough proposal that I'd like to tweak it and try it out where I live in Arlington. So, go housing.
Woohoo! Well, and that being said, obviously we need to make sure that we're taking care of everybody. And
Mhm.
that's the role, really, of those who are in government, is to make sure that the entire populace is well taken care of, not just those who can afford penthouse suites and drive really fast cars. You got to look out for everybody.
Well, I
Uh,
mean,
Ideally.
one of the interesting things about the people being more sensitive to racial justice issues, one of the things Black Lives Matter has, at least what I'm seeing, is it started to get people more interested in structural racism, and whereas why the system is unfair, and who is, you take our laws and you see who they kind of advantage and disadvantage. I mean, Boston is actually a really good example. If you hang out in the northern parts of Boston, like Back Bay, Fenway, Allston, Brighton, the Kenmore area, you're going to see like lots and lots of white folks. Now, there is a very big part of Boston, Boston being a majority minority city. You'd never see that from if you were in Back Bay, but if you go down to Dorchester or Mattapan, you will, it gets a lot more diverse. And one of the things that people are starting to ask is like, well, how to get this way? If you were in a suburb that was 90 something percent white, well, why is it 99% white? Are there neighboring communities aren't necessarily 99% white? Or even, to cite my own town, our most common form of housing is a single family home. In most of the town, that's all you could have. The current value of these things is the average is around $825,000. This is our last assessment. But if you think about it, so what do you need to do to buy a home that costs $825,000? So if you go to your mortgage calculator, put in a 20% down payment and whatever interest in, your tax rate. But, in my working through that little exercise, you're looking at close to $4,000 a month. So it's, there's long been a lot of the things that are in zoning had a racial origin when, the Supreme Court ruled in 1917 that, race-based zoning is illegal, but class-based zoning, well, that's totally fine. So, this is one of the things that, I am, as a personal project, I'm, trying to dig through, understand better, and ideally unwind.
Yeah,
Well,
the extent to which that the real estate empire formed the basis for which America's racial prejudice moved from a strictly legal framework to one enforced primarily through like private enterprise is real estate, like redlining, districting, the choice of where to build highways, where to build oil pipelines. It's all deliberate.
Yeah, or even simpler, where to build apartment buildings.
Or where to put luxury apartment buildings.
They're
The
all
toilet.
luxury apartment buildings. That's all they zone now.
Put them under the water, sell them to Ben Shapiro.
Public housing got started, back in sort of like the New Deal days when we needed a lot of housing across the country and private enterprise was not doing it. So the government stepped in and built homes. And unfortunately, a lot of the government seems to have largely gotten out of that business where, people, it's rare to see new public housing being built by a local housing authority these days, or at least in my own observations. So the challenge for low income housing is basically how do you get something at below the cost? You need housing for less than it costs to produce. So there's subsidies involved. So you can either try to put have market rate units subsidize low cost units. You can look for grants, and there are companies who do this successfully, but there's only so much of that going around. And that's kind of one of the things I liked about Cambridge's proposal is that they cut out a bit of red tape, but they're trying to make it more, just like market economical to do this stuff.
Well, but historically, a lot of them were public-private partnerships, and a lot of that housing is, it was owned privately, and they got a subsidy, and now those subsidies are expiring. And a lot of that's going to get turned over.
Mm-hmm. That is absolutely true.
And certainly we haven't had the funding since, I think, the 70s, if not the 80s. And that's an abdication on the federal government's part. But, we still have billions of dollars that go towards subsidizing home ownership through our tax system.
Exactly.
Big
And if-
oil, anyone?
And of course, so for all of you listening at home, the way we change this is we vote, and we vote smart, we vote pirate. And so that being said, we do have some interesting, for those out there looking to keep themselves safe yet still make their vote count. I think, Jamie, you had the update on the mail-in.
Yes. So Massachusetts, the legislature and the governor signed a law that allows everyone to get a mail-in ballot. So you won't have to go to a polling place, assuming the pandemic is still going on, which it will be. So you have until, so the Secretary of State has been sending out cards theoretically to every one who's registered to vote. But if you don't get it, you can still request one. But you have until August 28th to request a mail-in ballot for the September primary, and October. So that's August 20th, and then October 28th for I believe it's the November 3rd general election. So mail-in ballots are more efficient, less likely to, cause an increase in the pandemic, and is still your civic duty. Trump has gone and used it so many times. So if it's good for him, it's good for the rest of us. And we should all be using mail-in ballots. So again, October 28th for the September primary, August 28th for the September primary, October 28th for the November general election. Get those forms in, and we'll link to how to get one if you don't get one in the mail.
And just remember, if it wasn't effective, Trump wouldn't attack it. That's how you know it's good.
Well, but even Republican governors are starting to say, "Oh, we need this mail-in voting here, or else we're going to have people getting sick come November and September, and we don't want that." So they didn't all get the same memo, but Trump does what Trump does. Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this evening. All of you out there, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Beat the algorithm and help us share and get the good word out there. Thank you so much, and have a great night.
Fuck the feds.